The Flash is directed by Muschietti and is finally here. This movie has been in development for like 10 years. For context, when they first started talking about this movie, this channel was 1 month old. In The Flash, we follow Barry Allen, aka The Flash, who travels back in time to stop his mother's death. However, that comes with consequences in the multiverse. Therefore, Barry has to team up with himself, Batman and Supergirl to stop the destruction of the timeline that his mother lives in. This movie had a lot of production problems. Loads of different writers have been attached, loads of different directors have been attached. However, I was excited because the marketing has been fantastic, and I can't remember the last time a studio was this confident in their film. Like, the people they've got to watch this movie and say it is great is mad. If Tom Cruise says a movie's great, I'm gonna hear him out. Now, before I start talking about the actual movie, let me address the elephant in the room. In talking about Ezra Miller, I am talking about their performance solely. I do not condone the actions of Ezra Miller. I am talking about their acting in this film only, them as a performer. With that being said, they are exceptional in this movie. In Miller's performance, there's so much maturity, and as I said, they have to team up with a version of themselves. And Ezra Miller bounces off Ezra Miller really well. I love the fact that the present day Barry is slightly more mature, but the past Barry isn't, and I think that's very reflective of how he was in the other films. I do think people had criticism in how the Flash was portrayed in films like Justice League, so I think the Flash does a pretty neat job at acknowledging that. Michael Keaton as Batman is back. He is a very welcome return. I wasn't expecting what they did with his character, but I really liked it nonetheless. Sasha Calle is excellent as Supergirl. She definitely plays a very broken Supergirl, but I really appreciated that. I think Muschietti's action sequences are incredibly exciting. In terms of what he does with the camera, it's often very active and kinetic, and because of this, the action sequences have a ton of energy and they're just very, very entertaining to watch. And I gotta say, this is a very, very funny movie. I got a vibe from the trailers that there would be comedy in it, but I didn't expect to laugh as much as I did. And The Flash has a ton of heart. There is a really strong emotional core at its centre involving Barry's family, and that's essentially Barry's motivation throughout this whole film, his family. Therefore, it's very easy to connect with him. So there's a lot I love about this movie, but I do have some issues with it. There's been a lot of complaints online about the CGI, and while some of it is pretty good, there's a good chunk of it that isn't. There are genuine times where it looked so rough that I thought it might have been an intentional decision for it to look like that. If it was an intentional decision, then it's bold and I kind of dig it, but I don't know that. I think in another movie I would have been more taken out of it by the CGI, but because the storytelling is so good, it wasn't as much of an issue as it could have been. But it still was on my mind a fair amount watching the movie. As I said, The Flash has a very strong emotional core, but I do think it loses it a little in the second act. The second act is where the multiverse aspect of the film really comes into play. And because the film does spend so much time setting up the rules of the multiverse, the emotion can take a bit of a backseat. However, it does regain its emotion at the end of the second act and into the third act. I do feel like maybe on rewatch that won't be as much of an issue because I now know where the film goes. This is a 2.5 hour movie and I do think it is around 10 minutes too long. I'm not going to give anything away, but all I'll say is there is one sequence in the third act especially that very much feels like it's just there for fan service, and any important story moments that do happen during that sequence I feel could have come earlier. So in general, that sequence does feel unnecessary and does make the film drag on a little. It's fair to say the DCU has had its ups and downs over the last 10 years. They've had some really good films and then they've had some not so great stuff, let's put it that way. The Flash is one of their best ones. I had a blast watching it, it's very enjoyable and I really hope the audience enjoy it. I'm going to give The Flash a B+. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, you guys are awesome. Blu-ray Billy, logging off.